It's legal AF. It's the midweek edition. That's why Karen Friedman, Agnifilo, and Michael Popok are together once again, the dynamic duo. We got three fat topics, all of which matter, and at least two of them are major setbacks or will be major setbacks for the Trump administration, which is circling the drain of history before our very eyes. Teapot Dome scandal leading to cabinet members' departure. Forget that. We're going to talk about Signalgate, or the breach brigade, as I like to call it, or HuffPost called it. That's where every major member of the national defense and national security part of the Trump administration all got together and violated the Federal Records Act and also violated national security by communicating on an app you can get in the App Store called Signal, which even its own owner, its own CEO said, it's gold standard for private communications, except this is Pentagon level discussions about war plans against a Yemeni focused terrorist group called the Houthis, that including target packages. And then, to add insult to injury, the national security advisor, the director of national intelligence, the CIA director, the Department of Defense head, all basically lied during their testimony. And the Atlantic, which was involved because it was their editor-in-chief who got added to the signal chain for 4 or 5 days, they decided, well, we're going to release the texts, right split screen at the moment of their testimony, which showed that they were liars. And it got very heated in the hearings. Midas has done a great job following all that. But hearings are so yesterday, Karen. Federal court filings are so today, because a public interest group who frequently uses FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests to get to the bottom of what's going on in our government with their transparency, was scratching their head for a while saying, how come we're not getting any documents? Now we know why, because they were using Signal with its magical disappearing deletion component to communicate about high profile, the business of the public, which you're exactly not supposed to do. So they filed a new emergency temporary injunction case, which has been assigned to, wait for it, Judge Boasberg, Donald Trump's favorite judge, the one that he calls a lunatic and corrupt and a lefty and all, bashes him left and right in the Alien Enemies Act case, which we're going to talk about. He's back because he just got the case assigned to him. So we're going to talk about the hearings, what happened, to bring everybody up to speed, the new filing, the new federal filing. Then we'll move to another Judge Boasberg case as the chief judge of the district court in D.C., which is, God, it's hard to believe it's only been 10 days since this started. But 10 days ago, Judge Boasberg entered an emergency temporary restraining order, really two of them, against the Trump administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to deport undocumented Venezuelans, not even to Venezuela, to El Salvador. We'll talk to you about why they're putting them in the deep, dark hole of killer El Salvadorian prisons in a moment. But the judge took a look at the fake, phony proclamation of Donald Trump declaring war against Venezuela and this terrorist, narco-terrorist gang, and said, yeah, I don't see the enemy invasion, incursion, or the war declaration by Congress, which 10 days later, we still don't have. And no, I'm going to block you from doing that, at least while we're litigating. They didn't like that. They attacked him. Justice Roberts had to step in, up to the appellate court. We just got a new ruling from the appellate court. We'll cover all of that today. And then Donald Trump made good on his promise right out of the playbook for Project 2025 to try to change how we vote. There are certain things that the federal government can do about voting rules, and there are certain things they can't do because it is delegated to the states. And one of them is how states run and operate their absentee balloting, their provisional balloting, their mail-in balloting. But Donald Trump hated all of that because we all know that Democrats ate his lunch when it came to one thing: mail-in ballots, special ballots, veterans ballots, military ballots, and all of that. So he's trying to pass some new rules about when ballots can arrive and be counted. Here we go, to try to undermine the Democratic advantage, and as well as having some sort of voter ID maybe even a passport, maybe at the polling places. I mean, it's just getting ridiculous. We got a lot to talk about in all of those places. We might even touch, if we have time, on some United States Supreme Court decisions that have come down, or some oral arguments that have come down. But let's bring in Karen, who's in one of her favorite happy places, which is the Law and Order set, where she is a legal advisor for those that didn't know. Right, Karen?
Yeah, no,
Whose office is that again?
This is Lieutenant Brady. She is the lieutenant in charge of the detectives who are at the Law and Order. They're in the order part of Law and Order. So I for some reason, I've always liked her office the best, and I always use this whenever I need a place to do things like podcast or do work when I'm on set.
Early in our podcast relationship history, you do it from there, and people would tune in. I remember the comments. We still get them sometimes, which is Karen has a terrible office. What's going on in New York? Look at the grill on her window.
I know.
Like, it's a set. She's show off.
Well, but they do such a good job.
I know, it looks like a real crappy office in a police precinct.
Well, they, having spent much of my career in police precincts, they really do an excellent job at making it look legitimate and real.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. They have that half-drunk Grecian blue cup of coffee nearby. It's a New York thing. Along with my favorite part of learning about New York production is that I didn't realize that steam pipe that's in the streets of New York to relieve the steam heat of our that all the TV producers and movie production houses, they all want in their photos or their movies, they want that steam stack, and they don't get it unless they actually are needed. But that's another a little inside New York thing.
Very classically New York. Yes. Stack. Speaking of the New York coffee, my husband makes fun of me all the time because my favorite coffee is police precinct coffee from a Bun-O-Matic coffee maker. Yeah, I have apparently have the least sophisticated, least bougie, fancy coffee palette.
That burnt, dirty water coffee.
There's nothing like it.
Yeah. Well, let's blow off some steam ourselves. Why don't we turn to Signalgate, Breach Brigade, and what happened? You want to lay out what happened? I'll turn to the hearing and the lawsuit.
Yeah, well, this is just a scandal of epic proportions, right? So what is Signal? Signal is one of these chat groups, like WhatsApp or other places that people get together and have text message chain. Signal is considered one of the leading encrypted, end-to-end encryption, secure text chat groups that you can use. That being said, it's not infallible. And so it is not approved, for example, for things like national security or classified information, or even when you are in foreign countries, places that might be hostile to the United States. There are certain countries you wouldn't use that in because they can read that information as well. So although it is more secure than using, for example, a regular text message chat, it is certainly not up to the standard of national secrets, national state secrets. Well, so what happened? You had literally every single person who was in charge of national security, whether it's the head of the CIA or it was the Treasury Secretary, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, you name it. They were the who's who on there, and they were texting about the war plans, essentially, and the date, time, location, the setup, the plans of who, what, when, where they're going to drop a bomb. And if that's not classified, if that's not secrets, if that's not endangering military people who could be flying the planes, et cetera, in our military, I don't know what is. And they accidentally added the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, which is a extremely reputable, well-read article, or I'm sorry, magazine publication, and he happened to find himself on there. I don't know how he got added, and he had a bird's eye view into what was happening and where they were going to drop the bombs and when and on who. And, that talk about a huge breach. When I saw that, I saw that the editor, first of all, they said what happened, but they didn't publish the details in an effort to not jeopardize national security. But when I saw that, I thought to myself, these are the same people who complained about Hillary Clinton's emails and her server that she had at home, right, with allegedly classified information, but her emails, and these people are doing this, and they're so fast and loose with national security. I mean, we already know that Donald Trump is fast and loose with classified documents and national security when we saw how he kept all those classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. But his current administration, that they would do something like this is just outrageous. And then, of course, there were hearings about it and everybody lied about it. And so now he had to come out and actually publish what was said and show that it's absolutely highly classified. And this is stuff shared by Pete Hegseth. These were operational plans because the operation hadn't even been started yet. So pretty big deal. Of course, Trump and everybody's downplaying the sensitivity of the information, denying that it's a war plan. I mean, the fact that we're parsing words here, but it was extremely detailed strike information, including, again, the airplanes, the drones, all of that. And if this had been anyone else in the military who'd done something like this, I'll bet you anything they would have been court-martialed. So to say this isn't classified is outrageous. First of all, I had top secret clearance. I've had access to classified information, certainly nothing at this level. I mean, this is beyond. And so, I think this was a huge mistake, a huge misstep. And rather than owning it, they're lying about it.
And speaking of lies, we got new reporting as we're on the air that Mike Waltz, who's allegedly, what time is it? 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever it is, Eastern time. He's currently our national security advisor. They try to whisk him off to Greenland. He left his Venmo account open. And when you use Venmo, you can see Billy paid for a haircut for Molly, $12 or whatever it is. Yeah, he left his open with all his transactions, and there's a lot of reporters listed there. I don't know why he's paying reporters, but for those people that jumped to his defense yesterday and said he doesn't even know Jeffrey Goldberg, I'm not so sure about that. And
by the way, I saw a picture of them together. I saw someone posted a picture of them together.
Yeah, and how do you like your national security advisor keeping his Venmo open? This is the guy, and I ran it on a hot take. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, and we'll talk in a minute about him being the acting archivist for America. That's hard to believe. Mike Waltz and Hegseth, when he was on Fox and Friends, not only attacking Hillary Clinton, calling for her to be prosecuted, calling for her to be jailed, calling for her to be hanged from the highest tree. Okay, let's just turn it around. I agree with all that then. But so that was about email servers and a couple of emails, just like every other Secretary of State had ever done on her personal, Hillary email account. How about discussing war plans? You got Hegseth, who's barking out as if he's had a couple. Let's be frank. No war plans. They're not war plans. And the Atlantic said, you remember I was on the actual chat, right? I saw all of it before some auto deletion. And take a look. And so they were basically goaded into releasing the information as part of the First Amendment and freedom of the press to show that they basically lied to Congress. Congress is trying to get to the bottom, mainly the Democrats, only the Democrats, of what happened here and why it happened. And instead you've got John, they're all disqualified. They all should resign. I have a friend that's the best man at my wedding. He's not a Trumper, but he's Republican. He wrote me, he had been in the military, every one of them should resign. Every one of them should resign. And I was like, okay.
They had the exact times that aircraft was taking off from Yemen 2 hours before it was supposed to happen. This is unbelievable. What's his name? The John Ratcliffe, who's our chief spook, who's our head of the CIA. He said, well, it was Biden's fault. Which is exactly what came out of the text chain, which is we got to come up with messaging about attacking the Houthis, which is effectively Hamas's Air Force and Navy. They were attacking the Suez Canal shipping lanes, really impacted the Europeans more than us. But Trump decided, I'm going to be a tough guy and bomb somebody. Well, the Houthis are good. Biden had done it. So he said, well,
I was told that it was okay at the CIA. You're now the director of the CIA, may I remind you, to use Signal for non-classified, right? But this is not non-classified. This is, and then when they were pushed about it, both Tulsi Gabbard, who is disqualified as being the head of anything, including intelligence, she said, well, it's really not up to me. It would be really up to Hegseth at defense it was really, it's really Hegseth. It's really, hospital path to Hegseth. Questioning today in the hearing was over whether Hegseth was drunk. I'll just say it out loud because it would happen in the hearing, whether he was drunk while he was using Signal. And they said, and when Ratcliffe came to his defense and said, that's really out of line. And the Democrat on the committee said, really? Because he held up a drink while he was in Europe in February. And he has and he's admitted to a long history of being a public drunk. So how do we know that that wasn't part of that in the impaired judgment of using effectively an open app that the Chinese can peer into? Why isn't that an appropriate question to be asked? Donald Trump's Donald Trump's kind of silent lately. It was a glitch. It was just a glitch. But according to internal reports by the media, Trump's first reaction was, they did what? Which is the only fair reaction you can have to that particular thing. Now, heads should roll. In any other administration, somebody would fall on the sword and take responsibility. We know it's not going to be J.D. Vance because the egg got placed on J.D. Vance's face because in the Signal chat, which has been confirmed as legitimate by the White House, not by the Atlantic, he says, I'm not sure if the boss at POTUS really understands the ramifications of taking out the Houthis to benefit the Europeans, and it seems to be inconsistent with our attack on the Europeans. And they really hate the Europeans right now. So I think we should pump the brakes on this. So he got sideways and offsides with the president. So now all of a sudden he's got to go. Suddenly he's going to Greenland to get away. Talking about it, Siberia to get away.
Is he going with his wife?
Yes, he wasn't originally, but ever since he's got to find a way to get back in Trump's good graces. He already had a fight with Musk. Now he's publicly outed as being opposite to Donald Trump. And I'm not even talking about the deep fake audio from earlier in the week where somebody cribbed likely that he was attacking Elon Musk. This is real. And so he's like, I am sure that the West Wing called the East Wing or wherever the vice president sits. And the two staffs said, we got to get J.D. Vance out of here. Let him go to the dog race in Greenland with his wife.
Did you hear? Did you see?
Huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
And start making amends with Donald Trump and get him out of this media cycle and get him off to Greenland. And that's exactly what's happened. Go ahead.
Did you see that people in Greenland are selling MAGA hats that say "Make America Go Away"?
That's a perfect MAGA acronym.
Perfect.
I love that.
Perfect.
So the hearing has gone terrible for them, and has shown what you and I and Ben and others on the Midas Touch Network have said from the very beginning, which is this is not ready for prime time players. They are incompetent. They are unprofessional. They are sloppy with our secrets and with our public documents, and they should be disqualified from serving in office. Now, Trump's not going anywhere until we get the House and the Senate. The J.D. Vance isn't going anywhere unless Trump fires him as vice president. Question is Rubio, who already screwed up and should have resigned over the treatment of Zelensky in the White House, and is he going anywhere? The natural sacrificial lamb here is Pete Hegseth does a press conference that says he's got a drinking problem. He needs to spend more time with his family. The old sports coach that needs to leave. We'll see. But Trump, he circles that wagon tight, as you've said before, around Republicans. And he'll go down because he's not going anywhere. Trump knows I got nothing to lose. It just makes his administration look like a bunch of jokers that they are. When we come back from a quick break, Karen, let's dive into the lawsuit that's been filed. We knew one was coming. I think this lawsuit is genius because it doesn't even have to get involved with, was it classified? Was it top secret? Was it military? Was it intelligence? Was it any? It doesn't matter. It's all public records that needed to be preserved. And that's the focus of the new lawsuit we'll talk about when we come back, along with the I thought the biggest news of the week was the phony declaration of war last week, and Boasberg being supported by Chief Justice Roberts, who had to step out of character and protect him. No, we've got new reporting about what's going on in the Boasberg case on the Alien Enemies Act, right up to the minute, with a new a decision against the Trump administration for by the appellate court for DC, and then you and I will talk about the Voting Rights Act and maybe some other things if we have time related to the United States Supreme Court. But we've got our sponsors, and thank God that we do. For those that are like, oh, we got the sponsors again. Yes, we've got the sponsors, because without it, all of these things that we're doing are really not possible, to be frank. There's many ways to support our channel. One of them is if you got the disposable income, and I'm not asking you to spend money you don't have. We like these products. We test these products. We reject certain products. Jordy curates it for us, and we're like, no, I don't want to do that one. We don't, and we really love the sponsors, and they know what our point of view is. They know we're pro-democracy. They know what our audience is all about. They want to be here. So do that. And then, of course, other ways, support us. Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Come on over there. Hit the subscribe button. I got a big announcement here. We got a whole group coming over from what used to be True Crime / Court Authorities, led by Dave Arenberg. Dave Arenberg is coming over. The rest of the people you love on Court Authorities is coming over. And starting on Monday, they're going to be doing their work exclusively on Legal AF. And we'll kick it off with a Dave Arenberg video on Monday. And then that's it. Let's start with take a break with our commercial sponsors. I may be very open with you on this podcast, but off the air, I really do value my privacy. And it's 2025. Are your blinds still from 2005? There is a better way to buy blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery, and it's called 3-Day Blinds. They are the leading manufacturer of high-quality custom window treatments in the U.S. And right now, if you use my URL, 3dayblinds.com/legalaf, they're running a buy one, get one 50% off deal. We can shop for almost anything at home. Why not shop for blinds at home, too? 3-Day Blinds has local, professionally trained design consultants who have an average of over 10 years of experience that provide expert guidance on the right blinds for you in the comfort of your home. Just set up an appointment and you'll get a free, no-obligation quote the same day. Not very handy? DIY projects can be fun, but measuring and installing blinds can be a big challenge. The expert team at 3-Day Blinds handles all the heavy lifting. They design, measure, and install so you can sit back, relax, and leave it to the pros. It's 2025, and so much of my house is smart with Alexa, but I never thought about getting my blinds connected to Alexa too, so I can just say, Alexa, open the blinds each morning. With 3-Day Blinds, you choose from thousands of options that fit any budget or style, and with actual samples, you won't be guessing about what your blinds will look like. 3-Day Blinds has been in business for over 45 years, and they have helped over 2 million people get the window treatments of their dreams. So they are a brand you can trust. Right now, get quality window treatments that fit your budget with 3-Day Blinds. Head to 3dayblinds.com/legalaf for their buy one, get one 50% off deal on custom blinds, shades, shutters, and drapery. For a free, no charge, no obligation consultation, just head to 3dayblinds.com/legalaf. One last time, that's buy one, get one, 50% off when you head to the number 3, dayblinds.com/legalaf. Bad sleep, it can kill a day, making me less focused and productive just when I need it most. And meditation apps to help you sleep, well, you know how those go. So finding something that helps with restful sleep but avoids any grogginess in the morning is a priority. This podcast is sponsored by Soul. If you listen to this show, you've heard me rave about Soul's out-of-office gummies. Well, the team at Soul just launched their new Nightcap gummies, which are similar to their world-famous Sleepy gummies with one big difference. Nightcap gummies have 3 milligrams of THC for people who require something a little stronger to go to sleep. Like herbal tea and soft pajamas, the THC and melatonin in Soul's Nightcap gummies work together to promote deep, restorative sleep. How? Well, THC helps prepare your mind and body for bedtime, helping to reduce anxiety, stress, and pain. So you go to sleep faster and stay asleep longer. At the same time, melatonin signals to your body's internal clock that it's time to sleep, ultimately helping to regulate your sleep-wake cycle. And Sol's nightcap gummies also contain CBN and CBD, so you sleep deeply and wake up without feeling groggy. Last but not least, Sol obviously made them absolutely delicious. Every bite is packed with blueberry lemonade to put the sweet and sweet dreams. Sol was founded 5 years ago by brother and sister duo Mike and Angie Lee. Mike, he's a former world-ranked professional boxer, and Angie is an author and professional speaker who had the desire to create natural alternatives to medication that tackle problems they deal with themselves, like sleeplessness, anxiety, focus, and pain. And that's not all Sol's got. Whether you're looking for a sleep aid, enhanced focus, or pain relief, Sol has all your wellness needs covered. Plus, all of Sol's products are grown right here in the USA, organically farmed and gluten-free. So tell poor, crappy sleep goodbye and good night. Head to getsol.com and use code LegalAF for 30% off your order. That's 30% off your order using code LegalAF. One last time, getsol.com and code LegalAF for 30% off. Welcome back. Yesterday's news or today's news was the hearings about Signalgate, and now we've got the lawsuit. We've got a group called American Democracy Forward, or Democracy Forward, who's a public interest group who just really spends their morning, noon, and night in a bipartisan fashion, making public records requests known as Freedom of Information Act requests to the federal government in order to promote transparency in the government. And they base their existence on getting from the document information. They've suspected from the very beginning that the Trump administration was hiding the ball and hiding documents and not preserving them. Of course, Donald Trump, Mar-a-Lago. Need I say more? He's not going to be respectful of the National Archives requirement, the Federal Records Act requirement to preserve things. This was the guy that notoriously ripped up and ate pieces of paper and stuffed them in toilets as his staff try to piece them back together again, because these are the people's documents about the people's transactions, as the Federal Records Act refers to it. And you're not allowed to use Signal, a disappearing ink app with an auto deletion function, for official government conversation, really any conversation. It's not, as somebody said I think it was HuffPost, it's not like they were getting a group together to decide what to order from Sweetgreens. We're talking about bombing packages and military targets and timing of military targets for an attack on an enemy by using Signal. So the focus on the hearing side is that that's a breach of national security for obvious reasons. Believe me. And if Mike Waltz hasn't changed his Venmo settings, I only half joke, but now I'm worried. Have they? I mean, I'm not the IT director for the administration, but have you changed your passwords? Are you still using Signal? I mean, why? I joked, why don't you just cut out the middleman and use WeChat, the Chinese WhatsApp version? Just give the Chinese everything. They lived inside of the Verizon servers and peered into Donald Trump and JD Vance's traffic during the campaign. So of course, So whose idea was this? Mike Waltz decides to fat finger it, and he adds Jonathan Goldberg, of all people, and then tries to say, well, Goldberg, I don't know Goldberg, but he does know Goldberg, just like Donald Trump didn't know E. Jean Carroll. And he has a whole Venmo of reporters. I don't know if he's paying them off, but there's money changing hands, apparently, according to reporting anyway. So the lawsuit gets filed. What I love about the lawsuit, Karen, is that it's focused not on classification, the nitty gritty of classified versus top secret versus compartmented. Who cares? It has to do with public records and Federal Records Act violation. And they nail Marco Rubio, who I had forgotten or I didn't know is the acting archivist, because they fired the archivist. Of course, they didn't like the fact that she was considering making the Equal Rights Amendment an amendment, even though she didn't at the end. And they rewarded her by firing her. And Marco Rubio is now in charge of everything, USAID and the National Archives, but he's violated the Federal Records Act by participating in Signal. And Goldberg has the goods because he saw the deletions. And that means that our documents are being deleted. And it got assigned to Jeff Boasberg. Karen, what do you think is going to happen next?
I mean, look, the law is fairly clear here. There's a couple of statutes that talk about the preservation of federal records. You've got 44 USC, United States Code 3101, and 5 United States Code 701, which prevents the unlawful destruction of federal records and compels people to fulfill their legal obligations to recover them if they've been deleted or to preserve them for a period of time. And it's any recorded information, regardless of the form or characteristic it's made. It's pretty clear, it's black letter law, and there's no doubt in my mind that by using Signal from March 11th through 15th, at least we know for sure it was the dates, because that's when Jeffrey Goldberg was added to it regarding these coordinated strikes on Yemen, that was in violation, because at least one person, I think it was Marco Rubio, set it to disappearing, and when it disappears, it's gone forever. And so you're just not allowed to do it, right? Signal is not approved as a way to maintain the records and the business of the United States government. This is how everything is done. You remember how during Trump #1, people would run, and when he would tear up his Post-it notes, they'd run into the trash and tape them back together, because you're just not allowed to do that, right? Why do you think they're releasing the Kennedy files and all of that, right? It's these things are preserved, they belong to the American people, and it's part of history, and it's part of the official record of the United States. And these people work for us, right? They're elected officials and they work for us. So you have to keep it. It's black letter law. The only question I have is, will the court find that the plaintiffs here have standing to challenge it here in this particular case? That's just an open question I have, because although I thought they did a good job of establishing standing with all of their FOIA requests. Yeah, I thought so too.
The FOIA, so to catch people up, Treasury Secretary had a FOIA request to him, a Freedom of Information Act public. When I say FOIA, I mean public records request. So did Secretary of State. So did the other ones. They all said none on documents and communication. And their argument is, now we know why, because they were using Signal. How many other times did they use Signal? Where did they use Signal? This is fact finding that the judge would do, Judge Boasberg. So, but it's unclear that they are, that as opposed to the archives, for example, could easily have standing to challenge their use of Signal. It's just unclear whether they're going to have it, but I hope you're right. And I think it's a great lawsuit, easy to read, very thorough. And we'll the archivist isn't going to do it, because it's under the control of the executive branch, and it's Marco Rubio, so that's not happening. I think they'll find that, especially in DC, they'll find the injuries that's required for standing. And then the question is for Boasberg. This is going to go fast. We're going to have another fast set of hearings. I want to see what lawyer shows up for the Department of Justice this time in front of Boasberg, because they've asked for the temporary injunction. By the time we came on the air, he hadn't yet pulled everybody together on the docket. I'm sure he'll do that in the next 48 hours, because it is a temporary restraining order request on an emergency basis. I think this could be another Saturday hearing. He loves Saturday hearings. I read the transcript for the recent Saturday hearing. He was away and did not have he apologized. He says, I didn't have a suit. I don't have my black robe. So he was like in soft clothes, as we like to say, as a civilian. But he said, I do appreciate all the rest of you dressing up. I love Boasberg. But I think he's going to do some fact finding. He's going to do some ordering. We're going to have some assertions of executive privilege. They've already, when we get to the next segment, the Trump administration is very free with their assertion of privileges. Oh, the state secrets privilege. Can't tell you. I think we're going to see the state secrets privilege. We're going to see the executive privilege. You can't review us. You can't get to the bottom of this. But it's the Records Act. You either violated it or you didn't in real time, and a judge has to be able to review that. And it's not the case Jeb Boasberg wants right now, but it's randomly assigned to him. And here's what I think the Trump administration is going to try to do again. They're going to try to get rid of him. They already sent a letter to the last appellate court. Get rid of Jeb Boasberg. It's not going to work. You're not getting rid of federal judges because you write a nasty letter. Yeah. Hello?
Oh, hi. Sorry.
You write a nasty letter.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, you're not allowed to pick and choose your judges. These are lifetime appointed judges. Every president gets to fill vacant spots of federal judges. They have to be nominated and confirmed by the Senate. And then it's a lifetime appointment. And so you don't get to, just because you don't like them, unless there's some kind of cause, you don't get to just say, oh, gee, I don't like this judge. I'd like a new one, please. It just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
It's not the law. And by the way, Trump, this is their MO. How many times do you have to hear, every time they get a ruling that they don't like, it's the judge is a lunatic, the judge should be impeached, the judge is, just they go after and attack the judges. I can't even imagine, we've been practicing law together, you and I collectively for 75 years between the two of us, at least. And have you ever
70.
Okay, whatever. Can you imagine attacking judges the way they all do? I mean, I don't see anybody doing it. It's just absolutely not how you're supposed to practice.
No, and the judge is getting pissed off, and the Supreme Court got pissed off and stepped in to protect Boasberg.
That was unusual. That was highly unusual.
First time in history, a Supreme Court justice issued a statement.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think that's worth underscoring how unusual that is, that when people were calling for his impeachment, I didn't know it was the first time in history, but if I take your word for it. Okay. The first time in history that Chief Justice John Roberts had to come out and issue a statement, an uncharacteristic statement, basically saying
in real time.
Yeah, in real time. Exactly. Just, this is not how we do it. If you don't, this is what appeals are for. You don't call for the impeachment of judges. It's dangerous what you are doing and what is happening.
And inconsistent. Roberts had to do it. He was almost goaded into it. You and I covered the State of the Court address that he did on the January 1st every year. And this year, the topic was the judiciary is under attack. So it's very hard to watch the judiciary under attack, law firms under attack, lawyers under attack, and sit idly by if you're the head of the other branch. The Trumpers like to constantly harangue about, it's the executive branch, there's one occupant, he's got all the power, it's the unitary branch, it all resides in one person. Okay, well, the other branches have heads too. And the head of the Article 3 branch is the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. And let's just say he opened a dialogue with Trump. Now let's move to, and there's going to be a lot of intersection of the United States Supreme Court and Donald Trump's actions. The next one we're going to talk about is Donald Trump's, a Friday ago, declaring, or Saturday publishing, effectively a proclamation of war against Venezuela by way of a narco-terrorist drug gang, saying that that's the equivalent of being at war with Venezuela, and then invoking wartime powers in peacetime to try to turbocharge the deportation, not even back to where they live, to another country, into the waiting arms of a dictator wanting to abuse Venezuelans, instead of giving them due process. Or as Judge Millett put it in her concurrence today in siding against the Trump administration and denying their attempt to block the temporary restraining order of Boasberg, this is the intersection of due process, the Fifth Amendment due process, and the Alien Enemies Act. And you want to bring everybody kind of up to speed about what happened with Boasberg and this temporary restraining order and sort of the niceties of what's going on there. Then we'll move to the appellate ruling.
In other Judge Boasberg news, he's certainly busy on Legal AF and the Midas Touch lately, right? And these are just random assignments, by the way, how cases get assigned to people. And so I think we're going to be seeing a lot of them, because a lot of this stuff is going to be happening in Washington, D.C. for obvious reasons, because that's where the federal government is. So so essentially what's been happening and what's going on is there's something called the Alien Enemies Act. And there's all these history lessons that you learn when you read some of these court decisions, especially involving Trump and these laws from hundreds of years ago that they like to dig up, dust off, and try to apply to modern day standards. And so you learn a lot. And the brief history of this is apparently back in the 1700s. There was something first called the Alien Friends Act, and there was series of laws called the Alien Friends Act, the Alien and Sedition Act, and it granted President Adams with sweeping authority to expel immigrants, gag the free press, and purge the country of Jacobean sympathizers. So the Alien Friends Act was something that gave the president sweeping powers to detain and expel any aliens deemed dangerous to the peace and safety of the U.S. Well, and the Alien Sedition Act said it was a crime to write, print, or utter or publish any false, scandalous, and malicious writing or writings against the government, against Congress, and against the president with the intent to defame or bring them into contempt or disrepute. Obviously, anyone, not even a non-lawyer, could hear just from me reading these laws that these would be held unconstitutional or be, derided as unconstitutional, and they were allowed to lapse in 1800. But a new law in 1798 was passed, the Alien Enemies Act, that granted the president the power to detain and expel enemy aliens during times of war, invasion, predatory incursion. And so there are two clauses, one called a conditional clause and one called an operative clause. The conditional clause limits the Alien Enemies Act's authority to conflicts between the United States and foreign power. So in other words, you have to have declared war, or you have to say there's an invasion, something like that. And then once the conditions are met, there's an operative clause. And so anyone who's part of this hostile nation or government, you have to be 14 or older, can be apprehended and removed as an alien enemy. So it basically vests the president with incredible authority to detain and deport any non-citizen whose affiliation traces back to an enemy state. So, it's widely been thought to believe that it only applies when we're at war or under invasion or some kind of real predatory incursion. It's very rarely used, and I don't think it's ever been used in the way that Trump is using it, declaring that this narco gang that is affiliated with the Venezuelan government is designated a foreign terrorist organization conducting an invasion or predatory incursion into the United States. And so, he calls it a terrorism enterprise that is under the control of President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela, and a cartel, et cetera. So, this essentially, this was the whole scuttlebutt that you and I talked about, where they tried to turn the plane around. There was lies about whether or not the plane had already taken off. And Judge Boasberg issued a temporary restraining order, and that was appealed to the DC Circuit. And so what's happening now is a decision, a 3-judge decision, 2 out of the 3 found in favor of not lifting the temporary restraining order. And it was an interesting decision because they said, look, normally temporary restraining orders aren't something that's reviewable on appeal because they are so quick, they don't last very long. However, occasionally they are when it's really important. And we're going to find that an injunction against the President of the United States is something that's important enough to trigger appellate review, notwithstanding that we're going to not lift the temporary restraining order because there was literally zero due process that was given to these individuals. They were just declared part of this group. They were swiftly flown out of the country, and they weren't even allowed or given any opportunity to appeal it. And so now they're just being held in an El Salvadoran jail, and that's where we are. So obviously it's going to go to the Supreme Court next, but yeah, that's where we are.
Well, we've got, so there's like 3 different things going on, right? You got the temporary restraining order being challenged at the appellate level and a new decision there. You got Boasberg, who's trying to determine through fact finding whether there's been a contempt violation of his order, willful, by the Trump administration, who for an hour or so after an injunction was already in place orally, continued to fly planes in violation of that order. The whole thing, he thinks, was concocted in order to deny the court jurisdiction. because the filing of the lawsuit happened in the early morning of Saturday morning. Obviously, the Trump administration got wind of it. Proclamation gets published. It was secret on Friday. Plans were already in place. Wheels were already up. 200 people already off to this terrible prison, a prison so bad that more than 300 people have died in the last year in in this particular El Salvadorian prison, from natural causes, according to the government. If being beaten to death is a version of natural causes, then you will agree with the El Salvadorian government. So why the planes were continuing to go while they were bullshitting with the judge in the hearing room is what the judge is trying to get to the bottom of. The Trump administration has said, A, we're not going to tell you because we're going to assert state secrets. And the judge is not really sure that state secrets privilege applies when he's trying to get to the bottom of whether his order has been violated. And so they've said, roadblock, we're not telling you. And the judge has briefing going on about that and will rule this week on state secrets. I think he will deny the use of state secrets, and that will have to go up on appeal. He will find them, I think, in contempt, and that will be later in this week. The temporary restraining order, which again is temporary restraining order. That's what Judge Millett and Judge Henderson, who ruled against Donald Trump today in the appellate court, said. What is the rush? We're not telling you to release these people into the general population of the public. We're not telling you to stop picking them up pursuant to the Alien Enemies Act or detaining them or putting them in concentration camps. You want to put them in Guantanamo? You can do that too. But why are we deporting them out of the country when you're not even using the immigration statute to do it? Use the immigration statute. Get before a judge. Give them due process. We won't have a problem. And we're only talking about the short interval of time during a restraining order, which is 14 days, 20 days tops. Until the judge goes to preliminary injunction, which maybe is another 5 days from now, what is the effing rush? And you're compromising due process. Do we want to wake up in a world where people get called enemy combatants and whisked away in the middle of the night, chained together? Or do we want to have them have due process? Because that's the world we want to live in. And that was the Millett Henderson position today, that when they ruled against overturning the temporary restraining order, not on the merits yet, but just on the measures of when you can overturn a temporary restraining order. So for now, two of the three judges, the Trumper didn't agree. No surprise, Judge Walker. Two of the three said, yeah, we're keeping the temporary restraining order in place, which means Boasberg can still find that there was contempt of that temporary restraining order. If Donald Trump doesn't like it, he can try to take an emergency, which he may do by the morning, an emergency application to the United States Supreme Court. We're in a weird area, though, Karen, because this is a temporary restraining order, and appellate courts don't generally have jurisdiction over temporary restraining orders. It doesn't get triggered until preliminary injunctions, which is the next step in the food chain. So we got all of that going on at the exact same time, while Boasberg presides over the new case about Signalgate. It's a lot of fun, right? What we do.
It is. It's a lot. It's like a fire hose of information, though. It's hard to keep track, and as happened earlier,
but we do. We say it's hard to keep track, but we do.
Yeah, well, you do very well, I will say. I find it hard.
No.
Keep track of it all, but
you do too.
And things are breaking news as we are on the air constantly as well.
The Venmo thing while we were doing it. So we're going to talk finally about a couple of things here. I know, Karen, you're tight for time. We're gonna definitely cover the voting, the impact on voting by Donald Trump's executive order, and what that impact would be, and how the states are going to challenge that, led by the attorneys general that we all love in New Jersey and in New York and in other places. And then if we have time, I'll touch on some things that happened at the United States Supreme Court, including a request by Donald Trump to have the Supreme Court intervene in an area related to hiring 16,000 probationary workers back, and a oral argument about whether 2 black districts in Louisiana, voting districts, is too many, and whether the Voting Rights Act is really on life support. We're going to cover all that, but first we got another word from our sponsors, which is a great way to support the show. Comment, hit subscribe. Midas Touch Network over on Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Legal AF MTN is the other great way to subscribe. Great. I made an announcement today, starting Monday. starting Monday, all those contributors led by Dave Aronberg, the Florida law guy, man, that you love from court authorities and true crime, they're all coming over to Legal AF and doing their work there for us exclusively. And that's going to start on Monday. So that's the various ways to support us. And of course, watching our sponsors' commercials, but also if you have an opportunity supporting them, that would help our show as well. So here's another word from our sponsors. So I went to my 40th high school reunion recently, and while many of my classmates were excited about retiring or have retired, well, I brought my infant daughter to the reunion and I won the youngest child contest hands down. But that means that when most people's working is winding down to match their body's energy levels, I need to ramp up to keep up with my baby daughter. I believe one of the best aging breakthroughs of the last decade is Qualia Senolytic, and here's why. Qualia Senolytic is at the frontier of what is currently possible in the science of human aging. Senolytics are a science field revolutionizing human aging. A big culprit behind that middle-aged feeling can be senescent cells, aka zombie cells that linger in your body after their useful function, wasting your energy and resources. Let me break it down. The accumulation of zombie cells can lead to less energy, slower workout recovery, joint discomfort, and basically, well, feeling old. Qualia Senolytic is a groundbreaking, clinically tested supplement with 9 vegan plant-derived compounds that help your body naturally eliminate senescent cells, helping you feel years younger in just months. Here's how it works. You take it just 2 days a month, helping your body naturally eliminate zombie cells to age better at the cellular level. And Qualia's breakthrough formulation is vegan, non-GMO, and tested by leading scientists. Since taking Qualia Senolytic, I felt like I've turned back the clock. I got higher energy, less soreness after exercise, and a big boost in productivity. It's made me feel more youthful and energized as I have the energy level to nurture my baby daughter the right way. Experience the science of feeling younger. Go to qualialife.com/legalaf for up to 50% off your purchase and use code legalaf for an additional 15%. That's qualialife.com/legalaf for an extra 15% off your purchase. Your older self will thank you. And thanks to Qualia for sponsoring this episode. Look, let me tell you, if there's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking, it's with pre-alcohol. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. So I first gave pre-alcohol a try when I was celebrating our relocation and unpacking the last of the 150 moving boxes. I drank it before my first scotch and soda. And you wouldn't believe how on top of my game I felt the very next morning. This March Madness, don't let anything sideline your celebrations. Grab pre-alcohol before you go out and be ready to cheer on your team all day and night long. Go to zbiotics.com/legalaf to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Legal AF at checkout. ZBiotics is back with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/legalaf and use the code legalaf at checkout for 15% off. Welcome back. You're on Legal AF, the midweek edition. Of course, Karen, tell our audience about what Trump just tried to do or is trying to do by executive order on voting. And then we'll talk about what I'm sure the states are going to do in response.
Yeah, so another executive order. Trump really loves these executive orders. This one's called Preserving and Protecting the Integrity of American Elections. And boy, is this one a doozy. This one rolls back, 20 years of voting rights and everything that people have been fighting for so long. This is a Republican's wet dream, excuse my grossness, but it's absolutely unbelievable what they put in here. And it's quite well written in the sense that clearly they must have some good lawyers working on their team because they're trying to make it as bulletproof as possible. Now, let me explain why I say that. What's the difference between an executive order and a law? And when can a president issue an executive order? And it's really pretty fairly simple. Okay, the only place or the only people who are empowered to make laws are Congress, right? They pass statutes and either the president signs it or if they veto it, Congress has to override that statute. But what an executive order can do is a president can essentially interpret a law through an executive order, but they can't make new law unless except for a few very, very small, narrow circumstances, but they essentially can't make new law. So what they did here is they cited to all the laws that they claim they are interpreting. And it comes from the president's Article 2 constitutional power that vests in the president the executive power to it's quote, take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And that is how it's justified that they can make these executive orders. And they essentially shoehorn it within that part of the Constitution. So that's what an executive order is. And so I say that because that's how this was written. This is literally it's saying, okay, there's this law, this is how we're going to interpret it. This law, this is how we're going to interpret it. And, he starts by citing India and Brazil who rely on biometric data, saying, we rely, however, on self-attestation for citizenship. And Germany and Canada require paper ballots counted in public by local officials. Remember, that's what they tried to do in certain states where they thought that there was going to be close calls. They wanted to slow the process and make them count by and large, who are the people in the states who are doing election related things. It's mostly Republicans because the vast majority of states' legislatures are controlled by Republicans in this country. They also cited to Denmark and Sweden that limits mail-in voting to those unable to vote in person. And you don't count late arriving votes regardless of the postmark. It's all the things they complained about in the election until, of course, Trump won. And then suddenly this was the fairest, most secure, best election ever. But they were setting up all these issues, basically saying we want to require identification, citizenship, in person. They don't like mail-in, all these things to restrict people's access to voting. I mean, look, nobody wants anyone who cannot vote and should not vote to vote. That's not. I don't think any legitimate person is advocating for that. Nobody should be able to vote who isn't a legally legitimate voter. But really what happens here is this is voter suppression. This is voter intimidation. This is requiring people to go over and above to get certain documents that they might not have. It's to disenfranchise people who might be on the margins of society, right? So it's basically you need an identification, and you need a certain type of identification, like a passport or a real ID, the ones that you have. They're very, very prescriptive about what kind of identification you have to have. What if you don't have an ID? What if you lost your ID? What if you're somebody who can't drive and, like somebody who might have special needs, and can't drive? Why shouldn't they be able to?
I'll give you a real life example. My mother is in a wheelchair, for those that don't know, and has been for about 9 years. And she hasn't driven in all that amount of time. And because it's so difficult mobility-wise to get my mother to get a picture taken, I've never gotten her a non-expired photo ID. Now, that makes it very difficult because I wanted to fly my mother to live closer to me recently, and I'm literally going to have to do it by transport, by car, because I don't have a photo ID for her and she can't get one. Does that mean my mother doesn't have the right to vote? She's 90 years old. She's voted every year since she was 18 or whatever the period was. Yeah. And this callousness about the Trump administration. Social Security recipients are going to have to check in with like their probation officers on a weekly basis to Social Security, a Social Security phone line that they've cut funding for and field offices for. They got to check in because we got to get to the bottom of the 1% of fraud that's going on in Social Security. You know, it all falls into the same boat. We don't care what barriers to entry that we create, as long as it screws the Democrats and those that aren't MAGA. That's it. Let's just call it out. Sorry, Karen. Once my mother got in my head, I got very fired up.
No, I get it. Look, I have an adult child on the autism spectrum. Mm-hmm. She's never going to drive. And, you know, it's a challenge to get an identification for her. I mean, and it's just, it's everybody has, I'm sure, an example, a real life example of somebody who isn't in necessarily this is easy for, right? Or it's if you read the executive order and you look at it, it's issue after issue that they tried to impose in the last election to create these barriers for people to come and be able to vote. I mean, I was thinking of military officials who are overseas and who are fighting for our country, and they might not have been, you know, they might be in a war zone and couldn't get their mail-in ballot in time in the mail.
Thank you for your service, but you're disenfranchised.
Exactly. I mean, there's or look at college students, you know, college students don't always have a passport or don't always have their ID with them, or, you know, it's just really, we've come so far over the last 20 years of allowing more access to voting and allowing people to vote in lots of different ways. And this is just fake news to say that there's all these illegal immigrants and dead people voting. Nobody has ever found that, despite what they are saying. And
it is a 0.000, I'm almost done, 1% voter fraud problem, which means there's no voter fraud problem. And then, so I'll just, this part of it, I'll mention. The states are ready, if they haven't already drafted it, because it all comes out of we got the playbook before he got elected. It's like the opposing team in the football in the NFL left the playbook in the bathroom right before the game. We got the playbook. We got the 900 pages of the Project 2025. We knew they were going to do this. So a lot of these suits are drafted already. That's how they get filed so quickly. And so I'm sure tomorrow, tonight, before the week is up, there's going to be a filing by 18 to 22 of your favorite attorneys general. We can name them, led by Letitia James, or the attorney general for New Jersey, or the one for California, or Illinois, or fill in the blank. And they're all going to come together and they're going to say, this is an incursion on our rights as states given to us under federalism to control the time, means, manner, and method of voting. And it's up to our legislatures to do that. And the feds can't impose this on us, and it undermines and it disenfranchises people. And then we're going to have to see what court they file it in. We know it'll be in DC, or it'll be up in New Hampshire, Rhode Island, California, or the like. And it's coming. And it's going to, again, be, as I've only half joked, I've said to the Supreme Court justices who watch this show, cancel your summer vacations. I know you have these elaborate on the right side. You got these elaborate summer vacations. Got it. But cancel them, because you're going to be doing a lot of emergency hearings over the summer and the like. So, Karen, as we know, as I had said earlier, had something that kind of crunched her there at the end. So let me just wrap up the show while we're here all together. Again, we're indebted and humbled by our audience. The Midas Touch audience, the Legal AF audience, some of that overlaps, a lot of that overlaps, some of it's not. Some people are just Legal AF people. Some of them are just Midas people, so to speak. But you all come together here and support in such, I mean, I would not swap our audience and level of commitment, enthusiasm for any other YouTube channel's audience out there. I wouldn't. And I can name 5 or 6 that people think are our peers or our competitors. And I wouldn't trade anybody for it, because, we know it within our, in the fiber of our being, how supportive our group is, how important they find our content. And we take it seriously. And it's a responsibility that we won't let you down. We really won't. We get up every morning, all of us, from the back of the house The production team led by Salty and Sid and other people and Jeremy and the rest, and the brothers and their shining guiding light of where we need to end up. And I kind of took that with me over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Lastly, I'll just touch two quick things in a 2-minute kind of speed chess. Okay, speed dating. Here we go. United States Supreme Court still sitting on an application by the Trump administration to intervene and not make them rehire 16,000 young or inexperienced probationary workers back to the federal workforce. The administration doesn't want to comply with Judge Alsop's order up in San Francisco coming out of the Ninth Circuit, and we're still sitting around. It's not a good sign for the Trump administration, and yet they have not intervened yet. Nor have they set a briefing schedule, which is really weird. So it may just die by lack of interest at the Supreme Court level. That's one. So again, another opportunity for the Supreme Court to bail out Donald Trump. And he's losing votes on the Supreme Court, bashing judges who are well respected, like Boasberg, who is the roommate of Kavanaugh in Yale Law School and friends with Chief Justice Roberts. That's not winning him any friends at a moment where he needs every vote at the United States Supreme Court. And we just covered on Unprecedented, Dina Dahl and me, on the Legal AF YouTube channel, the oral argument about Louisiana's voting map and whether the two districts, which are predominantly black in a state that is more than at a 6 total, which is more than that as a percentage of the population, whether that's good enough, not good enough, just right, violates the Voting Rights Act. And here's the scary part. Kavanaugh came up with, why do we even have the Voting Rights Act anymore? Isn't there a time limit on it? We're colorblind as a nation, aren't we? Said the white guy to the almost other white people that were on the Supreme Court. No, we're not colorblind. We're not gender neutral. We're not color neutral in this country. What country do you live in? So it does concern me, even though I don't think the map is going to be overturned, because they're going to find, I think, that it was created for political purposes to save the hide of Mike Johnson from Louisiana, the Speaker of the House, and Steve Scalise. That's why it looks so weird. It's shaped like a snake, appropriately. But it's not done for racial purposes. I think it survives, but I don't like Kavanaugh trying to lift up under the hood of the Voting Rights Act again and trying to get rid of it, which came out of our civil rights movement signed by President Johnson. So we've reached the end of Midas Touch and our Legal AF midweek edition. Join us on Saturday. I do that show. We had our 4-year birthday. Midas had its 5-year birthday. We had our 4-year birthday, although we're really 4.5, because Ben and I were doing a legal show that was the precursor to Legal AF earlier. We just called it something else. 5-year anniversary for Midas. Hit the subscribe button for their Drive for 5 million. Come over to Legal AF. We just rolled over 500,000. We're trying to get to 1 million in under a year. And we're getting there with our new court authority, true crime contributors led by Dave Arenberg, who starts on Monday with us exclusively, joining our other contributors, Shan Wu, former Attorney General, Deputy General Counsel for the Attorney General under Janet Reno, and a great defense lawyer in his own right, under a brand he calls Undercolor. Court Accountability Action, Mike Sachs, Lisa Graves, Alex Aronson, looking at corruption and money in the federal court system. Mike Sachs is going to be coming on with Elie Mystel to do some work with us as well. And he's an amazing legal commentator as well. Dina Dahl does that show Unprecedented with me and other hot takes. Karen Friedman Agnifilo, when she's not busy being a practicing lawyer and a law and order commentator or a legal advisor. Come over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel. And of course, support us on Patreon. We have patreon.com/legalaf, where you can get some exclusive content you can't get anywhere else. So until my next reporting and my Saturday edition with Ben Meiselas and Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and Legal AF, the hot takes over on Midas, I'm Michael Popok. Shout out to the Midas Mighty and the Legal AFers.